Hi everyone, my name is Stephen Machek. I'm an assistant professor at CSU Monterey Bay in the kinesiology department. And I am going to do a little presentation about myself. I guess I shouldn't call it a presentation, more just like an introductory slide set that I created. But I'm really comfortable with the PowerPoint format, so hopefully that should demonstrate some things, interesting things about myself and my hobbies. And I really enjoy my hobbies, so I could talk to any of you about my hobbies for quite some time. But I kind of titled this Progressive Overload, a Lifelong Philosophy, because I definitely believe that progressive overload as a exercise or at least resistance training philosophical approach is that we try to add more weight onto the bar over time. We try to run for longer periods of time, or we try to increase our speed, right? The amount I guess reduce the amount of time that it takes to complete a given amount of distance when running, or something of that nature. Right? I think that life kind of applies the same way. We're trying to slowly build on a foundation, and so that's why I think that when I think about where I've been and where I am now, a lot of that has been trying to build on kind of one block at a time on where I started. You'll also notice that I insert some Star Wars quotes here and there. This one, for instance, is "Luminous beings are we, not this crude matter." That's from Yoda in The Empire Strikes Back. I'm a huge Star Wars fan, as which you will find out. But I tried to incorporate some quotes in here, not only to kind of demonstrate my love for Star Wars, but also because some of those quotes are actually really deep and really meaningful when it comes to their applicability to some of these slides that I'm going to be looking at. Anyway, a little brief history about my educational background is I actually did my undergrad in dietetics, fancy name for nutrition, back in San Francisco State University. I'm originally from the Bay Area, Moraga, California, specifically, relatively small town. And after I was done with that, I figured out that I wasn't super keen on clinical nutrition. Kudos to y'all that are trying to go into the medical field. It can be very rewarding. I just wasn't a huge fan of that particular aspect of it. And so I kind of wanted to do something that was more in line with one of my kind of adjacent interests, which was kinesiology, or exercise science. And so I did a master's degree in exercise physiology. And then I love those two things so much, and I love their intersection together. I'm a huge sports nutrition advocate, that I traveled all the way to Baylor University in Waco, Texas, with my wife, and we had a bunny at that time. I did a PhD in kinesiology, exercise nutrition, and health promotion. You can kind of ignore that last portion, the health promotion part, because I really only took one class doing that. And I very recently graduated in December of 2021. So I'm a kind of newly minted PhD, so to speak. Immediately after, or actually as I was finishing my PhD, I actually took on my first tenure-track position. I was an assistant professor of health science at University of the Ozarks in Clarksville, Arkansas. It was a really good gig. It was a really good way. It was a very small school, only 900 students, and even the town, Clarksville, Arkansas, only had 9,000 people roughly as an estimate in the entire town. So it taught me that I really wasn't a huge fan of rural life. It also taught me that I really missed coming back home, and that was something that my wife and I really wanted to do when we had our first child. His name is Ezra, and he's about 18 months right now in 2022, however, or whenever you're listening to this video. But anyway, brought me back to CSUMB, and that was a really good way for me to come back to the States and be in a beautiful area. I was originally attracted to because of a lot of the faculty members that kind of shared similar interests and kind of a same attitude about work and life that was productive yet kind of laid back and predicated on having fun, right? It's not every profession out there gets to have fun going to work. Being in academia isn't something that is super lucrative in terms of the monetary incentive, but in terms of the freedom and the ability to really feel like you're getting something, being rewarded both intellectually and professionally by your work is something that's kind of a rarity. But anyway, my family and I, we moved back to California not too long ago. And this is my family here. It's in the moving truck. That kind of brings me to one of the big things in my life, which is my family. This is my wife, Sarah, and this is my son, Ezra. I think he was probably around 6 or 7 months at that time. And here he is, just about a year old, right around Christmas time. And this is a more recent picture of him. He's about 18 months right here, and he's giving me, I'm not giving him, he's giving me one of my favorite energy drinks right there. It's a Rockstar, grape flavored. I have an energy drink problem, which you may or may not find out if you have any classes with me. Some other stuff about me, I don't dabble in it as much as I used to, but I was a huge powerlifting fan. I was really into powerlifting as a sport. I didn't really play sports growing up, but one of the things that attracted me about powerlifting was, number one, I don't really like moving all that much, which is kind of strange for someone that's in a kinesiology department. But I really enjoy finding a skill and attempting to get really good at it. And so I kind of adopted powerlifting, and I really enjoyed how I could hone in on 3 individual movements: the squat, the bench press, and the deadlift, and just kind of pour my all into getting better at those things. So that's me deadlifting right there. That's me and some of the friends that I got through powerlifting when I was over in Texas. And I also really enjoyed coaching people too. So I kind of coached some of my friends, and I still continue to coach some of my friends, just because I really love the sport. And one of the reasons that I got into exercise science was because I wanted to give back to the sport and learn more about the sport and get better at the sport. Some other stuff, more nerdy stuff about me, is that I also really enjoy anime. I was actually the president of the anime club in high school. No, I didn't start the club. I was actually elected president. It wasn't that small of a club. Nowadays, anime is a lot more socially acceptable. When I was in high school, it wasn't exactly the most popular club, but I've always had a passion for anime. And I've always loved the art style and the stories, and I've always loved a lot of the stylistic aspects about it. And so in order to kind of embody some of that, I used to cosplay or dress up as different characters and go to these anime conventions like FanimeCon in San Jose that happens every year. So these are some of the costumes that I've done. If you're familiar with any of those, feel free to reach out and let me know. I'm also a huge Star Wars fan, as I've already mentioned. This is me and my friend Richard right here with some lightsabers posing in front of a Christmas tree. I think it's a pretty dope picture. This is me, my friend Richard again, and then my wife. We were cosplaying from a game called Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. And obviously, what kind of Star Wars fan wouldn't go to Galaxy's Edge, either in Florida or in California, and pose in front of the Millennium Falcon? It's like a dream come true. I want to talk a little bit about some of the research that I do, because one of my goals is actually to let y'all know kind of what I'm interested in, because I'm really passionate about the research that I do and the different aspects of muscle physiology and sports nutrition that I love. And I want to bring you guys into that as well, right? And one of the ways that I can do that is to teach y'all about how research can be really, really cool. And so when I was doing my undergrad and graduate work at SF States, I built a really cool foundation, and I worked with this really cool scientist who was my mentor named Dr. Bagley. And what we did is we actually looked at individual muscle fibers. So we would take muscle from people, and we would actually isolate individual little muscle fibers. If you can kind of see, they look like these little white strands right here and there. And if we take that and we look at it underneath the microscope, we can actually see an entire muscle cell or a muscle fiber right there. And this is what you're seeing as this big picture. It's actually one of my muscle fibers, which I think is really cool. For my thesis, which is like a big project, basically, once you finish your thesis, and there's a couple other options out there, and you get to graduate, I had a really, really cool opportunity to actually look at the single muscle fiber characteristics of an elite powerlifter who's using anabolic steroids for about 20 years. So I thought that was super, super cool, and it was kind of like a dream come true, and it was something that was supported by my advisor, Dr. Bagley, as well as some of the other faculty that were on my committee. This is Dr. Kent Lorenz over there. And this is my buddy Donnie, who did the program with me. We actually graduated around the same time as us, just doing some lab work in there. It was really fun at that time, and I would still think that it's fun today. So when I was at Baylor, I got to work under this guy, Dr. Darren Willoughby. He's a big guy. He's a professional bodybuilder, And when I got to work under him, one of the reasons I chose to is because of all these really, really cool techniques that I got to learn. I got to do DEXAs on people. If you're not familiar with them, it's this big machine that basically can segment out body fat percentage, lean mass percentage, and actually look at your bone density as well. They're really expensive. I also got to learn how to do some phlebotomy work. I actually got to take some blood from people like the Chinese kayak and rowing teams, which was really fun. And then the thing that I was most excited about was I got to take muscle biopsies. This is actually me preparing to do a muscle biopsy on my wife's leg right there. And basically what a biopsy is you take a muscle sample from someone, typically their leg, and you can actually take that and turn that into some meat soup, and then you can run some tests on it. There's a bunch of other things you can do, but that's primarily what we ended up doing. But anyway, my research interests kind of centralize around 3 different kind of large macro scale topics, and those are nutrition, resistance training, and muscle physiology, and some other things that I'm also really interested in, kind of intersectionally related: fiber type, ergogenic aids, which is kind of like supplements, and as well as potentially like wrist wraps and knee sleeves and compression gear and things like that. So it can be not apparel, but things that you wear, or equipment, so to speak. Sports nutrition, and ultimately one of the things I think is really neat is how stuff works on the inside of our body, specifically the inside of the cell. So intramuscular signaling is a really, really cool component of science to me. I really enjoy sports nutrition. I really enjoy supplementation. This is a figure from some of the papers that we published, or from one of the papers that we published on creatine monohydrate and how it can actually help the brain. When it comes to skeletal muscle physiology, I really enjoy talking about fiber type. This is a picture from my thesis defense at SF State in 2018. And this is a figure, looks like a lot, because it was me talking about some mechanisms related to these drugs called SARMs, or selective androgen receptor modulators, and how they work in the body. And then in general, I just really love resistance training and powerlifting, and that's kind of why I wanted to get into exercise physiology in the first place, to give back to the sport that had already done so much for me. And so I enjoy just kind of researching all those different things. My dissertation, if you're interested in knowing about it, it kind of just, it's not like I'm going to go into massive detail about it, but one of the reasons that I picked this as a dissertation because I thought that it encompassed a lot of the different things I was interested in. And so the title of it was The Potential Synergistic Effect of Combined Blood Flow Restriction Training and betaine Supplementation on Skeletal Muscle Mechanotransduction Associated Cell Signaling. Really long title, but basically what we were trying to look at was whether using BFR training, where you put a little cuff around someone's leg and make them do exercise, plus betaine supplementation, which is a really popular supplement, or at least it's growing, can actually help increase the size of the muscle, at least in that moment immediately after resistance training, in a way that it actually kind of drives water into the muscle. If you've ever done like a hard set of push-ups or something like that, you'll probably notice that you get that pump-like effect, right? And that's partially due to extra blood flow to that area, as well as some of the swelling that can happen inside. And that swelling potentially could be why certain things like BFR actually result in comparable muscle growth to normal non-BFR exercise. So this is just a figure that kind of demonstrates some of the intracellular pathways that we can kind of look at to see whether that actually is the case. And we're still kind of working on some of these assessments of muscle tissue and blood and things like that. So if you're interested in stuff like that, just let me know. Anyway, I guess the point of me telling you somewhat about my research is that research can be really, really fun, and it doesn't have to be sitting in a lab with a pipette. There's some people that love only doing that, and that's to each their own. Just like with clinical aspects of things, there's some people that just love being in hospital settings and everything that entails. But it's not stereotypically just that, or it's not what the stereotypes always kind of note things to be, right? So with research, it can be hanging out in a gym with a group of your friends, taking someone to complete failure on a 1RM squat. which is kind of what we're doing right here. The reason we have trash bags on there is we were blinding the subject to the weight that's on the bar, so we covered it. And you get to present on things. This is actually me at a conference, and I got to run some tests on my wife, and I had a picture of her right there just to kind of demonstrate. It's important to remember that, as we enter into the new semester and we're inundated with schoolwork and we're inundated with different projects and different other commitments, is that we can do it, right? We can do all these different things. If you put your mind to it, if you're passionate about something, go and pursue that. I absolutely recommend that you do that and try to build on things. And that's kind of what I did since the very beginning. And it's, I think, brought me a lot of success. It's allowed me to kind of grow into the things and combine a lot of the things I'm really passionate about. And maintaining that mindset of understanding that, don't tell yourself that you can't do something. Really throw yourself into a lot of different things. If you fail, Yoda says the greatest teacher failure is, and that's really, really important. You're going to fail. You just need to be able to have a plan afterwards and stay positive and rebound, and you'll be able to build yourself the future that you want. So I would love to talk to you more about that, but thanks for giving me the opportunity to talk a little bit about myself.